Welcome to Digital Asset News to get top stories in crypto and bring it on a bite-sized pieces. Today, everybody's been talking about how traditional legend Bill Miller has put 50% of his personal wealth into Bitcoin, but I want to show you the flip side of that same coin by taking a look at another billionaire who's calling for the exact opposite. A little bit of balance. So we'll take a look at those two stories. Also, we're going to take a look at other traditional or TradFi legends who have already got on, just actually get it as far as Bitcoin and why they did. And then later, we're going to talk about a little meetup. So we'll do all those things, but first take a look at what's going on into the market. So today it is, I think it's the 11th. It's Tuesday, beautiful day here in Puerto Rico, and the market cap's up a little bit today. Looking pretty good. I mean, we had a pretty big slide, but now we're at 1.94 trillion. Bitcoin price is almost back to 42K. So, I mean, everybody's congratulating themselves, but remember, we're pretty far off from the all-time high of around 69K. So not a big celebration right now, but hey, take the wins for what they are, because we didn't slide back down to, I don't know, 20K or 11K like some people were calling for, sure. And if we take a look at the prices overall, just to see what's going on as far as like the market itself, Bitcoin's up 4%, Ethereum's up 5%, almost 3,100. It's pretty good. Binance coin, everything's up across the board in the last 24 hours. I don't think anything should be down. Let's see, which one's the big winners? 10% for Cosmos, 18% for Near Protocol. Man, that's on a tear. Almost 14% for Polygon. So things are pretty good. And like I've talked about before, this is not financial advice, just financial opinion. I know people are like, Rob, you talk about buy and hold, but then you talk about buying the dip and selling. Look, 95% of my portfolio is just buying and holding. But on the days when we see like these massive dips, I like to actually buy a little bit over here, and then as it goes up 10%, just sell off a little bit, because then I just accumulate that little dry powder on the side. Now, do I do this all the time? No, because guess what? I run out of money just like you do. I mean, I have bought so many damn dips. I'm all dipped out. And right now I'm just kind of just kicking back. Besides, I had a lot of personal finances to actually pay off, including this house, which I'm going to go over a video this week that explain how I actually purchased this place 100% on cash using crypto. So we'll get to that later on. But what I really want to talk about today is a couple of different billionaires fighting over, not really fighting, it's just two separate articles and two different sets of opinion about Bitcoin and the crypto market in general. And what I'm going to talk to you about real quick is billionaire bond king Jeff Gundlach. I think I said his name right, probably nailed it. Rings the recession alarm, says Bitcoin is hugely overvalued, and warns against investing into China. So here's what we got for this article. Just to break it down, Jeff here says that the Federal Reserve could cause a recession if it tightened its monetary policy, which they are going to do. They've already talked about raising the rates at least once. JP Morgan thinks it's going to be up to 4 times. We'll see. Double Line Capital's billionaire boss said only speculators would buy Bitcoin at its current price. That's right, that's us. But we have a thinking and a logic behind it. And then Gundlach trumpeted emerging market stocks and explains why he didn't invest in China or NFTs, emerging markets, emerging countries, which is weird because like I think that's where a lot of the gains are going to come from. A little bit risky, China, India, those types of places. So moving down, he states, and remember his nickname is the Bond King. So take it with a grain of salt. But we have to take, I like to get difference of opinions just to see what people are saying, because to really articulate your case, you need to know both sides of the same story, so that when people come to you and ask you like, well, what about gold? What about the intrinsic value? What about other markets? You can say, well, I understand, your concerns, but here's why Bitcoin and crypto is better. Ba, 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 ba. And that's why I bring this information to you. So he states, the bond market is already suggesting an economic slowdown. The economy keeps buckling at lower and lower interest rates. So I think the Fed only has to raise rates 4 times, and you're going to start seeing a plethora of recessionary signals. That could be true, but like my friend James over Vest Answers says, he goes, I think they're going to raise rates, and then they're going to, hint at raising them, but they know that they can't do it over time because it's just going to, cause everything to go into recession. So they're going to do like a little head fake, to maybe a little, raise the rates initially, and then just go, we were going to, but now we're going to kind of lay off. Also, we're going to do a stimulus package and blah, blah, blah. It's just, I think it's going to be the same thing over and over again, but you have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. He states, for the faint of heart, at some point in 2022, I think you're supposed to buy emerging market stocks. Sure, and if you want to put crypto in that category, even though they're not stocks, I would definitely do so. Even though some people say, that's not emerging, it's already here. Sure, whatever. Bitcoin is for speculators at the present moment. I would advise against buying it. And this is interesting because like the way the article was stated, it sounds like he's like, don't ever buy it. But he does say like, hey, it will be volatile as people get out. Maybe you should buy it at 25,000. So you have to understand that there's a story behind the story, and you have to really dig into it to get it. This guy, Jeff, isn't hypothesizing that you should never buy Bitcoin. He's just a guy that likes to buy cheap stuff, which makes a lot of sense to me. And I can totally appreciate that. So if he's like, buy at 25,000, sure, if it goes down there. But as we're going to see, Bill Miller, he bought at 30 and keeps buying all the way down and up. Lastly, to finish up, I like this quote. He says, bonds fit my culture of cowardice. At least he's honest. I'm sort of an anti-momentum investor, and Bitcoin is for momentum investors only. Just like FANG stocks. Look, we're in good company. FANG stocks. We got Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, or now it's called, or not Microsoft, Facebook, or now it's called Meta. So sure. And then lastly, the valuation is not good. I like buying stuff that's cheap, like we talked about. And if you're a momentum investor, it's like playing roulette with a strategy that works as long as the wheel doesn't come up the zero or double zero. You're making money, and then eventually you get a double zero and you're busted. Momentum investors tend to go out in a blaze of glory. Potentially. However, you have to understand that some of the biggest investors of our time have taken a look, and some of the smartest people have taken a look at different opportunities, and they've really gone all in. And you can see it with Amazon. You can see it with Meta, or what was called Facebook. You can see it with Tesla, what's going on right now. And I think you're seeing it right now with Bitcoin. So that is one side. And when he talks about going to zero, you have to remember that he's not the first one that said it's going to zero. And as a matter of fact, there's this great website I always like to bring up. It's called 99 Bitcoins. And we can see how many times Bitcoin has died. Let's see. The most recent death was 2021, December 28th. Bitcoin is a scam, which will only end in tears, which is pretty funny, actually. And this has been written out 440 times. But I want you to notice one thing. The price of Bitcoin when everybody said it was dead, this is at 23 cents? Wow. And then that $3, why Bitcoin will fail, and on down the ride, down the line, on down the line, and up. And of course, yeah, it's definitely going to fail here. And then, of course, what does it do? Does this and this and this. So, of course, it eventually could fail and go to zero, but history doesn't show that to be true. Which leads me to my next point, Bill Miller. And when somebody talks about going to zero and that there's a recession going on, there's also a way to kind of get out of it. Remember, you're not a victim of circumstance. You have the power to change anything that you have within your environment. So in this situation, I think Bill Miller took a look at different things and said, you know what? I think that I should look at this asymmetrical bet and go from here. So if you don't know who Bill Miller is, Bill Miller, I personally didn't. I'm not big into hedge funds and stocks and things like that. I'm just not. But Bill Miller holds the mutual fund record for being the S&P 500 for 15 consecutive years. So remember, like a week ago or so, we showed you that out of all the hedge funds in existence right now, 4 out of the hundreds that are out there, only 4 beat a basic buy and hold strategy of being the S&P 500. But Bill Miller here was smart enough to beat him 15 consecutive years in a row. So kudos to him. And what we're going to talk about, there's 3 different snippets we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about why he's buying at 30K and what will happen in the future. Then we're going to talk about, which I think is the most interesting, the environmental impact. Because you're going to hear a lot of different people like the Kevin O'Leary's and the Elon Musk talk about, well, Bitcoin is really environmentally dangerous. Well, here's Bill Miller's way around that. It's beautiful the way he said it. And then lastly, we're going to talk about gold and its intrinsic value. So let's just take a listen to the first one of why he's buying at 30K. Check this out.
Let's come back. And this time I started buying it again at $30,000, down from 66. And my reasoning was, there's a lot more people using it now. There's a lot more money going into it in the venture capital world. There are a lot of people who are skeptics who are now at least trying it out. And I thought maybe 50% is a good stopping point for it. But if it goes back down to 80 or 85, I'll buy it all the way down. Well, it did stop right around 50% and slowly started its way back up again. But I bought a fair amount at the $30,000 range and have been adding to various Bitcoin related investments since then.
And yeah, great. It makes a lot of sense. He bought it at 30K. And actually beforehand, he had bought it like at $300, $400 before. I just skimmed over that. But one thing he says is really ringing true right now. He's like, well, before not too many people were really using it. It was really speculative. He goes, but now there's a lot more people into it, a lot of hedge funds, a lot of different people that probably he knows pushing over to a bit. So I think it's a lot safer than what it was like in 2017, like when I got into it, or 2013 when a lot of you guys got into it. So I think that there's one thing to say about that. And the next part, what he's talking about as far as the environmental impact. Again, you're going to hear people like Elon Musk, and you're going to hear people like Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, talk about how, we got to make sure it's really environmentally friendly. Sure. And what he says here is, I think, the great workaround of what they're trying to do. So just take a listen.
So there's a company that that we own in our income fund called Stronghold Digital, which is a Bitcoin mining company, where the CEO owns 35%. It looks like they could make $6 to $8 in a couple of years, and they're a very low cost miner of Bitcoin. And all their energy that they're using, the electricity usage, is all renewables, or it gets credits for cleaning up abandoned coal mines. So it's one of those things that, as much as I like Bitcoin, I've bought Stronghold in here and own it also via the fund.
Yeah, so on top of that, I mean, he just says, like, look, we're just going to bypass that whole issue, just going, we've got a company that uses 100% renewable resources. Everybody can get on board on top of that. And also, just if you haven't known, El Salvador just put a little piece out. They're going to add more geothermal energy sources to power the Bitcoin city. And Presidente Bukele explained that the power coming from the volcanoes, that's what's powering the whole thing, managed and maintained by a state company called Lageo produces more than 1,000 gigawatts for the nation yearly. He states it'll be clean, cheap, and renewable energy from a source that will last at least a couple of million years. And that got me thinking, I'm like, what's 1,000 gigawatts? Because I have no idea. There was a great article from energy.gov. What's a gigawatt? And it says this. At the end of 2018, there were over 163 gigawatts of solar PV and wind power in the United States combined. So when they're talking about this, they're talking about 1,000 gigawatts. And if we take a look, well, how much is 1 gigawatt? 3.125 million PV panels or photovoltaic, 364 utility scale wind turbines, which are actually not environmentally friendly to actually produce, I might remind you, and 110 million LEDs, roughly 1.3 million horses, 2,000 Corvettes, 9,000 Nissan Leafs. That's just one. Remember, you got 1,000 being produced over here. So that's just one of the things that I think we can combat that environmental discussion. And then lastly, what he says here about gold, I think is important for all the gold bugs. First of all, I own gold. I own gold, I own a little bit of silver, and I own a lot of Bitcoin. Not a lot, but I mean, comparatively. And what he says here is like a good reminder, like when people talk about, well, gold's a great hedge. Yeah, well, it can also be confiscated, just like it was in 1933. Well, there's no intrinsic value because gold, you can use it on your cufflinks, you wear it in gold diamonds or gold watches and all that. Yeah, okay, well, here's a great suggestion that Bill Miller talks about as far as the intrinsic value, how we can combat that argument as well. Take a listen.
Right.
And gold is what people typically fled to when the governments tried to, inflate them out. And in the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt confiscated everybody's gold in 1933. You had to turn it in or you went to jail. So they can't confiscate your Bitcoin because there's nothing, if you hold it securely, as long as you have an internet connection, you can send it somewhere instantaneously at very low cost. And the reason I like the insurance company analogy is because if you think about, people talk about the intrinsic value of Bitcoin. This is a Warren Buffett argument, that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. It doesn't have any earnings. It'll never pay any dividends. And so how do you even think about something like that? It is a new technology. It's something that couldn't be done before. But in any case, the answer that I have to that is, well, I mean, what's the intrinsic value of that Mickey Mantle baseball card that sold for $5.5 million? It's just cardboard. And it doesn't even have a legend. It could be counterfeited very easily. Or what's the intrinsic value of a Picasso painting, which is just canvas and paint and maybe a frame. But people will pay millions or tens of millions of dollars for it. And so it comes down at the very basic level for supply and demand.
So yeah, great. I can totally get on board with what Bill is saying. It's just another person to kind of add to the repertoire of who is coming in as far as like with the traditional finance space, because some of the smartest people on the entire planet are finally figuring out that Bitcoin, crypto, and digital assets are a pretty good bet. So let me know what you think about that in the comments section. And then we'll also just finish up with traditional finance legends who are actually here, as well as with Bill Miller. Before I talk about that, crypto taxes are coming up. I use CryptoTrader.tax from the time that I actually signed up, the time that I imported all my trades and everything else, which wasn't that many, but there was a lot of things all over different places. It took me 30 minutes. There is a link in the description. It looks just like this. And you get 20% off. And also I did a deep dive into how to actually use this software. Oh, and also they integrated this year with Voyager. So if you use Voyager like myself, all your trades go that way and you don't have to wait for a CSV file. So anyhow, lastly, the legends. And this is just a small little snippet of people. Billionaire hedge fund investor, Druckenmiller. I used to say Drunkenmiller, but feels that's not right. Says he owns Bitcoin, a CNBC interview. Again, another legend who just kind of gets it. Then also you got Paul Tudor Jones, who at first talked about how like he's just had a little bit, now he got a lot of it, and now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little bit more heavy. And then he also had Ray Dalio, who at first said that Bitcoin will be banned. Then he said Bitcoin's okay. Then he was like, well, maybe 1%. Now he's like up to 2%. So before you know it, we're all going to be a bunch of Bill Millers going, you know what, 50% ain't bad. And lastly, we're going to do a meetup here in Puerto Rico. And we've been talking about this over the course of a couple of weeks or so, but tonight is the night. So it'll be from 4 to 6 p.m. The address will be in the description below. And just so you know, the requirements here for COVID are pretty strict. So just so you know, you got to wear the mask. You also have to have your ID, and you also have to have your vaccination card. Hey, I don't make the rules, I just live here. And that's it for today. So look, if you found a little value in today's video, give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing. A lot of things we talk about are time sensitive. And that's it for today. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next one.